Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be talking about Shining Force on the Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive, whichever. Shining Force is one of the first tactical role-playing games on console. It's not the first by a long shot. There was Fire Emblem before it, and then there were a bunch on PCs and other computers out there. I think the first time I ever played Shining Force, if I'm even remembering this correctly, it was on a compilation disc with the Sega Dreamcast. It came with stuff like Virtual Cop and a few other games. I think Golden Axe was on there as well. Anyway, let's get into the story of the game. The story is pretty simple. It's one that you've probably seen in a bunch of other games. It's been the subject of movies, books, probably other forms of entertainment out there. I could list them all, but I just don't really want to because it would go on for a very long time. Your character is the hero of this. He doesn't appear to be like a chosen one or anything. He does have a mentor though, so he is being trained by someone who ends up dying very early on. So we can go ahead and check that off of our list of cliches there. The goal is to stop the main evil guy from bringing an eviler person or creature back to life. And of course, spoiler alert if you haven't played the game, you don't stop the big bad guy from doing the thing that he wanted to do, so he brings a three-headed creature, dragon type thing, back, and you have to fight it. And, this worked really well because the programmers, they had already created the three-headed dragon thing, so obviously they had to show it at some point, and by God, they are going to make you fight this incredibly annoying boss fight at the end of the game. I'll talk more about that once we get to it, but that's pretty much the story. You have to fight your way through all the generals of this kingdom that's been taken over, and at the end of it, you have to save all of reality. It's pretty fun. So let's talk a little bit about the gameplay here. This is kind of an interesting entry in the tactical RPG genre. It's kind of like a half step between a JRPG and a tactical RPG. It's got some weird stuff in it that you don't really need in a tactical RPG. Like, you don't really need to go and explore towns and everything and talk to people. You don't need to actually move your party from one location to another. That stuff really isn't necessary, but it's in Shining Force for some reason at times. If you compare it to Fire Emblem, which I think is a pretty fair comparison, in Fire Emblem you're just moving from location to location, and each one results in a battle, or multiple battles. It kind of depends. But that's kind of how the story gets told to you. With Shining Force, there are a lot of things that you would find in like a Final Fantasy or a Dragon Warrior game, and that's because Shining Force was a little bit inspired by Dragon Quest. Oh my God! Wow. I'll leave that in there just so everybody can laugh at me and point out in the comments how I screwed it up. But yes, Dragon Quest, not Dragon Warrior. Sorry about that. And I will say, I prefer the way that Fire Emblem is set up, where you don't have to go and explore the cities, you don't have to, talk to people and hunt for clues to find out what to do. You're sort of moved through the game as, not really as quickly as possible, but they get you to the stuff that you want to be doing as quickly as possible. Shining Force doesn't necessarily do that. Another thing that kind of annoys me with Shining Force is it uses the same menu system that you would find in Dragon Quest and also in Phantasy Star, where if you want to talk to somebody, you walk up to them, press a menu opens up, and then you can choose what you want to do, whether it's talk, search, use your item, or something else. I really hate the way I really hate that. I wish they could just have you walk up, press A, and you start talking to them. But that might just be me, and it's something that I prefer, because I kind of started out with Final Fantasy, and I got used to that before going and trying the other RPGs. The part that really annoyed me with Shining Force, it has nothing to do with the battle scenes or the combat or anything. The menu system annoyed me, but the inventory was just an absolute mess. I really hated how they did that. And that has to do with just the fact that each character only has 4 slots. So you have your weapon, and then you have 3 open slots for either key items or for like healing items. And if you want to buy something, you have to choose who gets what. It's really annoying. I absolutely hate the way that they did it. But yeah. Let me talk a little bit about the healing items really quick. They're the most useful way you have to heal your characters. Sometimes they are more powerful than the actual healing spells that you have, and that's a little kind of disappointing because the healing magic just seems very underpowered. Even when it gets leveled up, it just doesn't feel like you're doing very much. Like you're just not able to keep pace with the enemy attacks. The things that I really do like about this, one, the combat is very good. I like the way that they kind of simplified things from the way Fire Emblem did it, where you don't need to worry about, whether you're approaching your enemy from the front or the back or the sides. You can just walk up to them and attack. I like that your weapons don't have a durability scale, so you can use your sword more than 30 times before you have to buy a new one. Spells are now using MP or magic points instead of the same durability thing that your weapons are using. There's just a lot of quality of life things or just ease of play that are improved in Shining Force, and stuff that's just kind of not. So let's talk about the visuals and the cutscenes. I love the way the game looks. I really like the pixel art in it. I like that the cutscenes are done using in-game sprites. I think the sprites are very well detailed, especially on the combat scene. The sprites in the background look really good. And on kind of like the main scene or the main screens, they look pretty good. They look a little bit more cartoonish when their avatars are up and when they're moving around on the main screen and also on the battle screen. The combat scene makes it look a little bit more mature than it really feels like it should be, because it feels very laid back and lighthearted. There are some characters that they try to make obviously evil or try to make them look a little bit scarier than others. I think it's a really fun looking game. It's very colorful. It's just got a lot of variety to it. I think they did a very good job with the art style of the game. The only thing that I think I would have changed with this is I would have had the same cutscenes that you had at the very beginning in like the intro video that I showed. I would have preferred to see those in place of the in-game cutscenes, because I think that type of a cutscene does better to kind of transition between the battle and between you moving around and also in between the chapters. The way you get a transition for the chapters is it just pops up and says you've completed chapter 1. Do you want to save? You click yes or no, and then it goes chapter 2, blah, blah, blah. So you just have text. You don't have like an actual picture or anything. And I thought that was not that great. They could have used some of those transition cutscenes from the intro or something along those lines. And I think if they wanted to do that, then they could have replaced the in-game graphics cutscenes with those as well. I think the in-game graphics cutscenes are fine the way they are, but it would have been better if they had something closer to the cutscenes at the very beginning. One thing I wrote down here is it feels like Shining Force could exist within like the Phantasy Star universe. I mean, it makes sense because they're both made by Sega, but it feels like this could be happening on like in a different solar system within like the Phantasy Star universe or something along those lines, because they sort of blend like both games blend like high fantasy with science fiction. They're mostly fantasy games, but you'll have stuff in there where all of a sudden you'll have robots, you'll have some kind of like higher technology that feels out of place with the rest of the world. It just feels really cool. Shining Force doesn't go all in on it like Phantasy Star does, where they have like actual spaceships and everything. But it feels like these two series could be going on in some way, with the exception of Phantasy Star 3, because that's got its own weird art style that doesn't fit in with anything, and it's just bizarre. But we're not going to talk about that. That was for a completely different video. We're just going to stick with Shining Force, and it looks very good for what it is. Okay, so let me just run down the likes and dislikes that I have, because I kind of feel every once in a while when I do these, I get a little bit too negative, and I don't really mean that. I like the way the game looks. I like the gameplay. I like moving characters around on a screen that, kind of feels like you're playing chess in some way. I like figuring out, which squad I want to use, not necessarily which one is the best, but which one is the best for me. And I like just playing stuff like this where you don't have to, get too intense. You can kind of plan out your moves and that sort of thing. And where if you fail, you can just kind of try again, learn from what you did, and try another strategy to beat the boss and that sort of thing. I like the characters and the dialogue in this as well. I think everybody kind of feels like they belong in this game. There can be some funny moments in it as well, but those are kind of toned down a little bit. It is kind of weird that like they're pinning all their hopes and dreams on like a young group of heroes, but that just sort of works in with the rest of the story. It's a very simple story, but they execute it very well, and it is it's a very fun game to play, and I enjoyed sitting back and playing it. Up until the last boss, that one, yeah, I had to set the controller down and walk away for a little bit at the last boss. Now, the stuff that I don't like, it's all things that aren't used anymore. So it's stuff that's kind of tried out in like these experimental phases of like early genre games like this. And they kind of get dropped by the wayside as better tactical RPGs come in. So like the menu system kind of goes away, or gets implemented better in later games. You don't have to worry about your inventory as much. The leveling, which I forgot to mention, when your characters level up, it actually means something. And in this game, it doesn't always mean anything. They got the balance with the healing spells worked out in other games. They just have a lot more balance with certain things, because this game does feel rather unbalanced. The enemy AI is actually more intelligent and less artificial. This one, oh my god, there were times playing this where I was like, I don't think the enemies have any idea what's happening, and they're just waiting for me to attack. There were a lot of things that could have been fixed with the enemy AI here. So let's wrap this up with my final thoughts. I could probably keep rambling on, but we're way past where I normally go for these videos, and I don't think anybody wants me to keep rambling. Maybe you do. Let me know in the comments if you want me to keep rambling or just, wrap these up faster. So final thoughts. I like Shining Force. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those games that I wish Sega would keep making, but I think it's kind of been supplanted by Valkyria Chronicles, because they do similar things, even though Valkyria Chronicles is it's its own game kind of, and or at least it's its own type of a tactical RPG, whereas Shining Force is a little bit more old school, and it's kind of been dormant for a while. And if they did bring it back, I think they would probably end up fucking it up and turning it into an action RPG, which I can't say that I think Sega would do that, but it feels like that's what would happen with it, because it just sort of feels like that's what every game is now that's trying to be an RPG. They need to shove the action parts in there and drop the turn-based stuff, which works for a modern audience and everything, and it's just people like me that are more into turn-based stuff. So, yeah, I don't think I need to tell Sega this, but make a game that's going to be more appealing to mass-market audiences and not so much me. Because just one gamer is not going to keep you afloat or get you where you need to go. Okay, I'm honestly sorry about that. About rambling a little bit. I think this is a great game. I really like Shining Force. I think the graphics are great. The gameplay is awesome. It just has some weirdness that would need to be changed around or would get fixed in future entries in the genre. So anyway, guys, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But let me know if you think I ramble too much, too. I'd always appreciate the feedback. You can be as nice or as mean as you want to about that. Anyway, talk to you guys later. Bye.